Okay, let's start by talking about philosophical writing. So on this slide, I have this quote about philosophical writing from a book on philosophical writing. So let me just read it and then I will explain it a bit, especially in relation to the lesson in philosophy of language for the week. So the quote says, philosophical writing is usually argumentative writing. The heart of such prose is the author's thesis, the central point that he or she is trying to defend, explain, justify, or otherwise convince the reader to believe based on whatever rational considerations the author can muster. Summarizing and extracting the thesis of a text involve writing and analysis, processes which facilitate the transition from critical reading to critical writing. Okay, so now here at the beginning of the semester and in this lesson, I'm giving you your first required readings in philosophy of language. And also, I'm also going to refer to the final output that you have to write for this class, which is an argumentative paper on a philosophical topic, more specifically on a topic in philosophy of language. Now, the first point that I want to make is that reading and writing are inseparable. Learning how to read well goes some way into learning how to write well. So one of the things that I'm going to teach you in this module or in this lesson for the week is what kind of writing, at what specific kind of philosophical writing, and what specific kind of argumentative writing we find in texts under philosophy of language. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need to see. Now, there are already things that I wrote in the module. I'm not going to repeat them, but the first thing is that when you read the philosophical text, you will know it's not easy. So I want to begin again with how you are probably in need of some help, of some assistance. The most common thing, and I ask you not to overlook this, is that when you're reading a text, there might be some words that you're unfamiliar with. So you read the sentence. Sometimes you know all the words in that sentence, but sometimes you don't, right? So if you don't, you should go to a regular dictionary. So the Oxford English Dictionary, but not just the Oxford English Dictionary. I think what's very useful and free is the online etymology dictionary. Merriam-Webster also has an online dictionary that I think is free for the most part. So you can use that also. So the first thing is, if you read the sentence, there's a word that's unfamiliar, you should look up that word and then not just look for the meaning of the word, but take notes, right? That's how you develop your understanding. That's how you also develop your vocabulary. And that's very important for both reading and writing. So you write it somewhere. Okay, this is the word that I don't know. And okay, I looked it up and this is the meaning. You can write it at the margin, or you can write it in a document, or you can write it in your notebook. Now, the second thing is sometimes you find out that you read a sentence and you realize, all these words are familiar. I mean, I know what those English words mean, but I don't understand the sentence. Perhaps you will say to me that often happens to you in philo. Pag nagbabasa ng philo, talagang ganun. Parang, alam ko naman yung mga salitang yan, pero bakit pag binasa ko sa isang buong sentence, hindi ko maintindihan kung anong ibig sabihin, kung anong sinasabi. Okay, minsan, o baka nga madalas, ang nangyayari dyan, meron kasing familiar English word na merong technical philosophical definition. Kaya dito mo kailangan yung Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy. Kasi may mga salita na merong technical definition sa philosophical discussion. Mahuhuli mo lang kung ano ibig sabihin ng pangungusap kasi yung philosopher pala na nagsusulat, ginagamit niya yung technical definition. So, mahalaga na hindi ito makaligtaan. Kung minsan, merong mga topics, babanggitin ko mamaya kung saan magandang konsultahin yung Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy tsaka yung Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. These two sources are fairly reliable. The SEP, the Stanford Encyclopedia, is a lot more respectable compared to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy for the following reason. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy has a more thorough and transparent vetting process. Peer-reviewed yung lumalabas na entries dyan. At saka, mas madalas at saka mas regular yung updating. Yung IEP, hindi ganun ka-regular i-update. Basta may entry na doon, halos hindi na-update. Tapos bukod pa doon, yung IEP, may mga entries yan na walang nakalagay na author. So pansinin nyo minsan pagka tinignan mo sa IEP, kasi dapat sa ibaba, pag nag-scroll down ka doon sa pinakaibaba ng page, dapat nakasulat yung pangalan ng author doon. Sa karamihan ng mga entries sa IEP nandun, pero merong iba na wala. Ang dahilan dyan ay meron silang ginamit na source, I think from the 18th century, from things like medieval philosophy or the older parts of philosophy that they do not cite properly. And some people are contesting that they shouldn't do that, or if they do that, they should at least cite the original. So that's a bit of background of the IEP. But the IEP is also something that has shorter entries. So it's a little bit easier to navigate. Yung SEP, parang yung entries dyan, may mga entries dyan na 40, 60 pages. Kasi yung entry na yun ay tungkol sa isang topic na napakaraming naisulat na at napakaraming mga komplikasyon tungkol doon. Madalas naman, yung SEP entry kahit na napakahaba, very well organized into sections. Kaya useful pa rin kahit hindi mo babasahin yung buong entry. And the other thing is the bibliography in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is usually very, very useful. And if you use the bibliography in conjunction with a close reading of a particular section, that would allow you to gain some familiarity on how the literature on a particular topic or a particular argument on a topic is organized. Okay. So one of the other things is you can look at encyclopedias, Wikipedia. In most cases, Wikipedia is helpful. Yung Encyclopedia Britannica, limited free access. Hindi lahat ng bahagi pwede ma-access for free. Pero minsan, ang kailangan mo lang naman yung first few paragraphs para maintindihan mo yung binabasa mo sa philosophy text. Okay, yung mga book review, at saka yung Google Scholar, at saka yung NDPR, at saka yung iba pang sources kagaya ng PhilPapers, sa susunod ko na muna pag-uusapan kasi hindi nyo pa yan kailangan ngayong linggo. Okay, ito lang ang punto, no? So, nagbabasa ka ng argumentative yung style ang content. So, pagka binabasa mo yun, nahihirapan ka, may mga techniques dyan, kabilang na doon yung pagkonsulta pa sa ibang sources. Okay, patuloy tayo. So, ito yung Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy. It is written by Simon Blackburn, a well-known British philosopher whose work is mainly in metaethics and philosophy of language. At yung Blackburn's views in philosophy of language and metaethics are actually intertwined. So in a very interesting ways. I'm not sure if we're going to have an opportunity to discuss his views, but this is a very useful volume that gives you the technical definitions of certain terms that philosophers use. And Simon Blackburn is being someone who specializes in metaethics and philosophy of language. This dictionary is leaning more heavily on the analytic philosophy side of things, although it is also something that contains things from continental philosophy. So very helpful sa atin ito sa kaso natin sa philosophy of language, kasi kagaya ng nabanggit ko, nung una tayo nagkita, ang philosophy of language ay napapailalim sa analytic philosophy. So ito ay websites lang ng Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So yun ay IEP, usually yung acronym, at pwede naman i-search yan mabuti. Tapos ito yung Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, usually referred to as SEP. And it's free and widely available, so you can consult that as you see fit. Okay. Now, let's go back again to reading and writing about philosophy, and specifically about philosophy of language, which is our class, right? So, una, At saka ito yung madalas na, kasi mag-third year na kayo, karamihan sa inyo ay incoming third year or thereabouts, yung iba fourth year na. Tapos magsisimula rin isipin yung thesis. So yung pagsusulat, kung hindi man thesis, may equivalent yun, di ba? Kung hindi Philo 200 yung kukunin mo, meron namang equivalent yun na kailangan mo pa rin magsulat. Kahit anong gawin mo, kailangan mo magsulat. Kasi kung Philo major ka, yun yung dalawang bagay na kailangan mo gawin. Kailangan marunong ka magbasa ng philosophy text. Yun yung ginagawa natin. Hindi tayo nagsusurvey. Wala tayong laboratory. Nagbabasa tayo. Hindi tayo nagbabasa ng nobela, pero minsan meron din mga nobela na philosophical, pero ang paunahing binabasa natin yung mga philosophy text. Pagkatapos na nagsusulat din tayo. So Louis Vaughan makes a very important point when he says, to write philosophy, you must be able to read philosophy. Yun yung condition. Philosophical books and articles, unlike texts that narrate, explain, or report information, cannot be skimmed for key facts and details. Rather, philosophical writing tends to be complex, advancing an argument, exploring a hypothesis, explaining a doctrine or theory, or evaluating a line of reasoning. Because of its complexity, philosophical writing demands close and perhaps repeated reading if justice is to be done to the author's intention. Okay. So, ang ibig sabihin, sasabihin ko sa inyo, hindi ibig sabihin nito imposibleng iskim yung philosophy text. Sasabihin ko nga, hindi lang na hindi imposible, posible na iskim ang philosophy text. Sasabihin ko, I'm not only going to say that it's possible to skim philosophy texts. I'm going to say something stronger. I'm going to say it's necessary to skim philosophy texts, especially the philosophy texts that we will be reading in philosophy of language. The caveat or the qualifier is that we mean a specific form of skimming. That's the first caveat. So may particular na uri ng pag-skim na kailangan gawin. Pangalawa, hindi pwede na skim lang. So, pwedeng iskim yung reading. Pero kung skimming lang ang ginagawa mo at wala kang ginagawang iba, magkakaroon ng maraming problema. Okay? So, yun yung dahilan kung bakit pinag-usapan ko rin yung close reading versus skimming doon sa module. So, ano ibig sabihin natin ng skimming? Yun yung pag-usapan natin ngayon. So, Jim Pryor's Guide to Reading Philosophy Texts gives you stages of reading. Ito yung sinasabi niya. Skim to get the source, get the sense of the structure of the text. Right? So, three-step process yan. Yung una, itong skim to get the sense of the structure of the text. So, ito yung unang gagawin. Ito yung panimula. Ito yung preliminary step. Parang trying to look at it from a wide-angle view. Trying to look at the text from a wide-angle view. Ito yung pinakamatagal gawin. Yung close reading. Yung malapitang pagbabasa. Itong evaluating author's argument, ito ay technically hindi na reading, writing na yan. Writing na yan. Okay, so sa ngayon, sa bandang simula, ang pagtutuunan ko ng pansin, itong unang dalawang stages. Skimming to get a sense of the structure of the text and reading slowly and carefully. So binigyan ko kayo ng isang required skimming exercise ngayong linggo. I-check ko yan kung nagawa ninyo. Hindi ko papasabit pero may gagawin tayong nakabatay dyan. I-check ko yan sa susunod nating pagkikita. At pagkatapos mang skim, kailangan din matutong magbasa ng malapitan. Ngayong linggong to, iba yung pinababasa ko sa inyo ng malapitan. So, iba yung teksto na kailangan iskim, tapos iba yung teksto na kailangan ng close reading. Sa susunod na linggo, at saka mas madalas, parehong text. It's the same text. You skim it first. And then you read it slowly and carefully. At least twice, probably more than twice, going over it slowly and carefully ang basic unit dito ay paragraph. So pagkatapos ka ng isang paragraph, sasabihin mo, okay, ano nangyari sa paragraph niyo? Anong sabi niya? Okay? So good exercise is to outline the text to write a sentence per paragraph. Okay, so pag-uusapan ko yung skimming, kasi sa karanasan ko, ito yung uri ng pagbabasa na maraming philosophy major na hindi ganun kasanay. Yung iba, ang alam lang nilang gawin ay itong malapitang pagbabasa. Yung parang, okay, ibatuhin mo ng, ibato mo sa estudyante, yung ibabato ng teacher sa estudyante yung text. Baka galing kay Hume o kaya kay Descartes o kaya kay Derrida. Tapos pag nakuha niya yun, kailangan babasahin niya, tapos meron siyang highlighter, usually highlighter yun, digital or physical highlighter. Pwedeng nilalagyan ng number yung paragraphs. Tapos ayun, close reading na. Palagi ko sinasabi, pag hindi marunong ng skimming, parang sinasabi mo na marunong ka lang maglakad ng mabagal. Hindi mo kaya maglakad ng mabilis. So yung ganun yun ganun yung analogy. Yung close reading parang mabagal na paglalakad. Tapos yung skimming parang mabilis sa paglalakad, parang tumatakbo na. Ganun yan. Okay. So para saan yung skimming at paano yung ginagawa? So babalikan ko lang to ulit. Skimming works like this. Before you do any close reading, you look at the opening and closing paragraphs. Meron ako idadagdag bukod sa pagtingin sa first paragraph or first few paragraphs or the part of the text that looks like the introduction. Minsan 2 paragraphs yon. So look at the opening parts, hindi lang opening paragraph, opening parts of the paper and the closing parts of the paper. Minsan, yung paper ay merong malinaw na sa simula nakalagay introduction. Meron pa iba na may abstract. Tapos merong iba na may nakalagay conclusion. Tapos may ilang paragraph doon or may isang paragraph doon. Minsan walang ganun. Minsan parang hulaan mo, okay, ito yung introduction niya. Wala siyang section break, pero pagka tinignan ko kung ano yung mga sinasabi sa mga unang salita doon sa paragraph na yun, okay, hanggang dito yung introduction, tapos dito nagsisimula yung conclusion. Baka isang paragraph o 2 paragraph. Usually, the conclusion is only 1 paragraph. The introduction may be 1 paragraph, at most the conclusion, the introduction might be 2 to 3 paragraphs. But apart from the opening and closing paragraphs, ang isang napakahalagang hindi dapat kalimutan ay ang pamagat, ang title. Merong mga article na pagka pinagtagpi-tagpi mo yung title, nakalagay sa introduction, nakalagay sa conclusion, mahuhuli mo na kung ano yung structure ng discussion at saka kung ano yung sinasabi, yung main claim or thesis nung teksto na yon. Right? So the point of skimming is to get a sense of the structure by looking at the structure, by looking at the sections or subheads. So yun ang sunod, no? Pagkatapos mo tignan yung opening and closing tsaka yung title, ang pinakamabilis na dito sa opening and closing paragraphs, medyo kailangan mo pa rin ano yan parang basahin ng mabagal lahat. Ang bibilisan mo yung pagtingin mo itong gitna. Hindi title, hindi introduction, hindi conclusion, mas mahaba yun. Minsan 30 pages yun, mahaba. So titignan mo ano yung nangyayari doon. Meron bang sections or subheads? Kung wala, maghahanap ka nung lead words na I will argue that. Here's the example. Yung mga ganun, hahanapin mo. So mabilis lang, ito yung bahagi na pwedeng gamitin ng timer na matapos sana ng ilang minuto lamang kasi ang punto naman dito ay hinahanap mo lang yung structure o yung daloy nung talakayan nung babasahin mo. Para pagka malapitang pagbabasa ka na, hindi ka maliligaw. The point of skimming is to be able to orient yourself about where the author is going and why. So when you read very closely and carefully, you don't lose sight of the forest among the trees. That is the point. Okay? Finally, the part of the skimming, you get the sense of the structure of the argument and you watch out for certain words para malaman mo kung kailan naglalatag ng mga katwiran yung author. Right? So, hanapin mo yung mga salita na thus, therefore, hence, nevertheless, however. Doon sa guide ni Prior, mas marami pa siyang halimbawa ng mga words na pwede mong hanapin. Pag nagbabasa ka digitally, pwede po pang i-search iyan para makikita mo, okay, anong kasunod nun, ano yung kasunod nun, alin dyan yung mahalaga. Pero mabilis lang yung paggagawa nito. Itong skimming ay practice din. So, lalo na para dun sa mga interesadong mag-thesis sa susunod na taon, kailangan matutong mag-skim ng mabilis kasi pagka nagre-review of related literature at saka nagre-research para sa thesis o mas mahaba pang kailangan isulat, kailangan skimming muna bago close reading. Di mo naman pwedeng i-close reading lahat ng makikita mo na baka related kasi wala ka namang oras. So napakahalaga nitong skimming. Para sa required reading dito sa Philo 195, mahalaga yung skimming kasi kagaya nga ng nasabi ko para hindi ka maligaw, hindi ka malito pag nagko-close reading ka na. Para doon yung skimming. Pag nagre-research ka naman, kailangan mo yung skimming kasi yung skimming ang magsasabi sa'yo kung maglalaan ka ba ng oras at lakas para basahin ng malapitan iyon. Okay, halimbawa may 10 o 20 journal article. Hindi mo naman yun pwedeng i-close reading lahat. Pwede mong i-skim yung 20 para malaman kung alin doon yung pwede o dapat i-close reading. Okay, so yan yung yung function ng skimming. Okay. May tanong kayo, pwede naman natin paglilinaw, pwede naman natin pag-usapan pag nagkita tayo ulit sa classroom. Okay. We're moving on. Okay. So ito yung mga texts natin, ano? So these are just the covers of certain books. And I'll talk about the books on this side more quickly. So here I'm just giving you a qualifier for the difference between primary and secondary texts that I gave in the write-up for the lesson. Merong mga bagay na hindi ganon kalinaw kung primary or secondary text, kagaya nito. Thomas Aquinas' commentary on Aristotle's Politics. Technically, parang secondary text ito kasi commentary eh. Diba sabi natin, ang secondary text sa Philo ay mga commentary, pagpapaliwanag, scholarly exegesis or interpretation of a very important philosophy text. Ito ay commentary on Aristotle's Politics. Minsan, ang pagkakaiba ng primary at secondary text ay nakabatay sa kung ano ang pakay ng researcher. So I'll say that again. Sometimes the difference between a primary and secondary text is determined by what the purpose of the one doing research is. So if you are an Aquinas scholar trying to understand Aquinas' ideas, itong commentary na ito ay primary sa iyo. Kasi nga, mga ideya ni Aquinas ang pinag-aaralan mo. Pero kung ikaw ay scholar ng politics ni Aristotle, secondary source ito. So minsan ganon, ano? Depende sa kung ano yung purpose nung nagbabasa ng teksto. Okay? Kasi may mga ibang text na pwedeng maging secondary, pwedeng maging primary. Hindi lahat ganito, pero ito ay isang pangunahing halimbawa. Okay. Now here is an example of tertiary text. Actually medyo mas malapit sa ito textbook, pero luma na. 1950s, The Principles of Linguistic Philosophy. Written by Weizmann, so who is an Austrian philosopher and a member of the Vienna Circle. Okay? At meron isang chapter, yun ang dapat nyong iskim para sa linggong ito. Okay, so yun lang dahilan kung bakit sinali ko ang cover ng librong yan. Pagtutunan ko ng pansin itong librong ito, edited by A.P. Martinich, The Philosophy of Language, 3rd edition. Now, I will always refer to this book as the Martinich Anthology. Ang ibig sabihin ng anthology, collection. Oo, kasi itong librong ito, sinabi ko na sa inyo na ang primary texts sa philosophy of language kadalasan journal articles. At dahil doon, nagkakaroon ng mga compilation ng mga articles na yon, tapos nagiging libro. So primary texts lahat ng laman nitong Martinich Anthology. Tapos Tapos, ang isa kong babanggitin, itong Philosophy of Language Anthology na ito ay madalas magkaroon ng revised edition kasi ganun yung dynamics ng publishing industry na meron siyang economic dimension na gusto nila magbenta ulit. Tapos, ayoko naman na pabiling kayo ng libro kasi napakamahal ng mga yan. So, ginagamit natin yung lumang edition. Meron nga, yung pinaka-latest edition ay hindi na lamang si Martinich ang editor, may co-editor na si si David Sosa. Anyway, ang ginagamit natin ay itong third edition kasi bukod sa luma na available yung PDF para sa atin, hindi tayo mahihirapan. At yung nilalaman naman ng mga PDF na yun ay mga journal articles na lumabas mas matagal na kaysa dun sa paglabas nitong third edition. Okay? So pag sinabi nating Martinich Anthology, ito ang ibig sabihin, itong libro na to na available sa inyo bilang PDF. Maraming pages ito, I think mga 500 or so pages. Di naman natin babasahin lahat. Pero yan yung pangunahing pinagkukuhanan natin ng primary sources para sa mga babasahin ninyo. Okay? Okay. So, ito naman yung inyong tertiary source. Ito ang ating pangunahing tertiary source textbook. Ito yung textbook na ginagamit natin. Kagaya nung Martinich Anthology, minsan ang tawag ko lang dito sa librong o sa textbook na ito ay Lycan. Ginagamit ko lang yung apelido niya, yung philosopher si Bill Lycan. So si Lycan ay may third edition na rin nitong libro na ito. Pero gamitin pa rin natin yung available as PDF. Yung second edition, pinaghambing ko na yung second edition at third edition sa tansya ko. Wala masyadong nagbago at maganda naman itong second edition eh. Kaya yan na lang yung gagamitin natin bukod sa ito yung edition na may physical copy ako. Kaya mas madali rin sa akin para yan yung PDF na bigay ko sa inyo kasi lahat ng pages na babanggitin ko galing dito sa second edition na yan. Okay? So, ang maganda dito sa Philosophy of Language ni Lycan, I think it's very, very clearly written. He is also not above cracking jokes, and he has a very distinct writing style. Now, one other reason why I choose the Lycan Anthology, apart from that, in my opinion, it is the best textbook that's available after I have canvassed several available ones. One other reason I give this book as the textbook is that it is given by a well-established philosopher. So Lycan is a philosopher in his own right, and he has very specific ideas and views and positions in philosophy of language, and his views in philosophy of language is different from mine. Kasi minsan yun din yung challenge kasi pagka natuto ka sa isang libro o sa isang teacher, tapos minsan para sa estudyante, mahirap paghiwalayin kung alin ba yung mga pananaw na nakalatag sa literature at alin ba yung opinion ng aking binabasa o opinion ng aking teacher. So, minsan madalas mahirap paghiwalayin yun. So, tinutulungan ako kayo kasi yung preferred positions ko on theory of meaning is different from Lycan's. So, at least to have like two different voices on like which theory of meaning makes the most sense. For Lycan, his preferred theory of meaning is the truth condition theory. For me, I think the theory of meaning that's better than the others is the use theory of meaning. Malamang lilinaw ko anong ibig sabihin ng mga ganyan sa mga darating na linggo. Okay. So una, sasabihin ko lang, what Lycan calls the representational theory of meaning or RTM, yun yung acronym, is very similar to the view in the Augustine quote that Wittgenstein begins with. So pagkatapos ng preface noong Philosophical Investigations, yung part 1 at pinakamahalagang bahagi ng Philosophical Investigation, numbered remarks. Na may numbers yun. Kasi may 1, tapos minsan mahaba yung remark, minsan maikli, minsan nga isang sentence lang, minsan naman parang sobra sa isang page. Baka pag-usapan natin kung ba't nagkaganyan yung itsura ng philosophical investigations. Pero ang punto lang dito, ang pinag-iikutan ng ideya nitong representational theory of meaning, saka kung ano yung sinasabi ni Augustine doon sa quote na pinag-usapan ni Wittgenstein, itong ideya na the primary function of language is to describe the world. That linguistic terms, words, sentences are meaningful because they mirror, that's the word that Lycan uses in the text, because they mirror what is the case, right? And then also, at the very beginning of the book, notice that Lycan draws attention to what Kate Ritchie calls foundational question about linguistic meaning. So, napag-usapan na natin ito nung first classroom session natin, yung tanong na bakit ba may mga tunog, may mga bagay, kagaya nito na nakikita nyo sa slides na meaningful. Meron siyang linguistic meaning. Meron mga bagay na walang linguistic meaning. So, saan nangyayari yon? Ang sagot ng representational theory of meaning ay sa representation. It's meaningful because it represents the world. Right? Because it represents certain state of affairs. Hindi ko tatalakayin lahat ng babasahin nyo. Hindi ko tatalakayin sa recording na ito ang lahat ng babasahin nyo doon sa libro ni Lycan para sa linggong ito. So pinapabasa ko lamang sa inyo ang pages 1 to 11. Mahalaga ring tignang mabuti yung table of contents ng libro ni Lycan para pwede mong basahin yung mga bahagi nung libro na yan, ng textbook na yan, na relevant dun sa lesson natin for the week. I think one of the virtues of Lycan's book is that he writes in a very concise way. Sometimes I can give you a few pages to read, something like 3 to 4 pages, but you actually have to read it very, very carefully because a lot is happening in his explanation of the objections or his explanation of what a certain view or what a certain theory of meaning is all about. Okay? So, ang primary reference natin, ang textbook ninyo, ay itong Lycan. Okay? Lycan ang itatawag ko dyan. Yun yung nickname ko para sa Philosophy of Language, Contemporary Edition, Second Edition, William G. Lycan. Ang tatawagin ko lang yan bilang Lycan. So, pag sinabi kong Lycan, ang ibig sabihin itong librong ito. Okay? Okay. Ito naman yung pangunahing halimbawa ng primary text para lang maintindihan ninyo. Ito rin yung isa sa pinakamahalagang text sa philosophy of language. And Wittgenstein is one of those philosophers who had, like, we know a lot of interesting things about his life, but also in terms of how he wanted his book to come out. This book came out posthumously. So namatay siya bago niya matapos yung libro. Pero halos tapos naman niya. Medyo obsessive-compulsive siya sa revision eh. Kaya yun din ang dahilan ko ba't di siya natapos. Bukod sa may sakit na siya nung panahong sinusulat niya yan. Sabi niya sa kanyang literary executors, nakabilang itong translator. Ang nagsalin ay ang main translator dito ay si Anscombe. Gertrude Elizabeth Martha Anscombe. Etong si Hacker at Schulte ay dagdag lamang iyan. Okay? Ang pangunahing talagang nagsalin ay itong si Anscombe na naging estudyante ni Wittgenstein. Sabi ni Wittgenstein kay Anscombe at dun sa dalawang iba pang literary executor, kailangan pag pinablish nyo yung sinulat ko, dapat facing pages na nasa isang page yung original German, kasi German speaker si Wittgenstein. Siya ay pinanganak sa Vienna. At nandun sa kabilang pahina, pag binuklat mo yung libro, nasa isang side sa bandang kaliwa, kaliwa nung taong may hawak ng libro, sa bandang kaliwang kamay, nandun yung German, original. Tapos yung pagsasalin na si Anscombe ang gumawa, nandun sa bandang kanan. So yun ang sinabi ni Wittgenstein. Tapos makita mo nga sa Remark 1, pagkatapos ng preface, hindi nga nagsimula ng English, di ba? Latin. Kasi yung quote kay na galing kay Augustine dun sa Confessions ay Latin yung original. So minsan may mga tao na masyadong mahigpit kung kung tumutukoy ng primary text, ang tinutukoy lamang nila na primary text ay yung nasa original language. Hindi natin gagawin iyon sa philosophy of language kasi mas interesado tayo sa mga conceptual issue kesa sa interpretative questions. Okay. At saka sana hindi naman kayo nagpanic nung binuklat nyo yan tapos nakita nyo, may Latin yung nasa ibabaw, may German yung isang side tapos Latin yung nasa ibabaw. Kasi yung Latin sections ay nakatranslate naman into English sa footnote. Okay. Now, here's one thing that I forgot to mention, but actually I mentioned it in passing. If you look at the Lycan textbook, it's written in an objection reply format. So the investigations is also written in an objection reply format. Pero kailangan ng extended exposure to the text before the reader figures this out and then gets a sense of, okay, there's a certain view here that's being described, but Wittgenstein doesn't actually believe that. He's actually going to object to that. Minsan ganun. Kaya kailangan ng pag-iingat sa pagbabasa ng mga teksto kagaya nito. Okay. So ito yung representation. So ito ay mga synonymous English word. Representation, representing, signifying, minsan ay picturing. Sometimes that is the term that is used. And actually, Wittgenstein at a certain point in his philosophical career thought that language pictures reality. So what is the answer to the foundational question about meaning? Many philosophers answer that by saying what we previously saw, language is meaningful because it represents reality. Language is meaningful because it pictures the world. Right? Pero ngayon, darating tayo doon. So maraming mga pilosopo yun ang sagot nila. At saka sophisticated yung sinasabi ng mga iba. Sinasabi ng iba na, okay, pwede na merong function yung language na hindi descriptive, hindi representational. Maybe we also do other things in language, that there are meanings, there are forms of linguistic meaning that's not strictly speaking representational. However, many philosophers would like to insist that representation or signification or picturing is the primary source of linguistic meaning. Meron tayong ibang forma ng linguistic meaning naka-piggyback o nakasakay lang yon doon sa representation. Pero ang pinakamahalaga talaga ay representation. Right? So, kaya sinisimulan ni Wittgenstein yung kanyang philosophical investigation doon sa quote mula kay Augustine kasi gusto niya sabihin, okay, tignan natin isang importanteng pilosopo na matino naman, na hindi naman siya, nag-iisip naman siya, ganito niya pag-isipan ang wika. Pero sabihin ko na sa inyo, hindi niyo pa rin natutunugan, pero sa palagay ng may akda ng philosophical investigations, the author of the philosophical investigation thinks that Augustine's view of language is mistaken. Right? Yun yung opening move kasi usually yung argumentative style sa philosophy of language at sa analytic philosophy ay magsimula tayo, let's start with a view that appears to be reasonable, that a lot of reasonable people believe. And Augustine is just taken as a specific example of a person who believes that language is representational. Actually, marami sa atin, sa palagay ko, unexamined assumption natin, our unexamined assumption about linguistic meaning is Augustinian. What do I mean by that? Usually, and I don't know if any of you have done this, when we learn a foreign language, we think that the best way is if you're learning Spanish, if you're learning Korean, if you're learning Japanese, sometimes we think that the best way to learn a new language is to acquire a large vocabulary, more specifically, a list of words that are nouns. And a lot of people do that they learn a foreign language by getting post-its, and then lahat ng nasa papaligiran nila, pwede mong i-label lahat ng bagay sa kwarto mo, sa bahay mo, dun sa salita nung wika na inaaral mo. So kung Spanish yun, kung lahat nung yung mesa, lalagyan mo ng mesa, di ba? Madali yung Spanish para sa ating mga Filipino kasi maraming salitang hiram na galing sa Espanyol. Pero ang sinasabi dito, pagka inisip natin na okay, anong ibig sabihin ng mga salita na yan? Okay, they stand for things in the world. Right? So that's the intuitive, unreflective, often unexamined understanding of language. And that is that's the opening move, so to speak, in this conversation about linguistic meaning. Okay? So usually the argument starts with, okay, what do we believe when we're not philosophizing yet? What do people believe when they're not thinking about this issue extensively yet? Okay, why do they believe that? What are the reasons for believing that language is primarily representational? And you can give a series of reasons. Both Lycan and Wittgenstein actually do that, right? And then we